First of all, a very warm welcome from my end as well. I'm Christian. I will be your host for tonight. I'm a partner at the global investment firm eVentures, and I have the pleasure to be hosting the fourth event tonight. I have the huge pleasure to introduce an old friend and colleague of mine, Valentin Stalf. Valentin has been working for Deutsche Bank, Deloitte, Roland Berger, and Rocket Internet before. He's been on the Paymel and Pay11 project where we actually met, and he's most famous for actually being the CEO and founder of Number 26, today called N26. One of the most successful startup stories from Berlin, and still one of those big candidates that we hope will even thrive further. And yeah, we have the huge pleasure to talk about building outstanding MVPs. I think that N26 is a great example of how we can do that, and we will try to dive deep into what it means to be an entrepreneur in this field, and also try to unveil a little bit of the secrets behind that. So Valentin, please join me. All right. So first of all, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you very much also to kind of the organizers, everybody who put together the event. Thank you for inviting me and thinking about N26.
Cool. I can still remember back in the days when you actually started Papaya, which was the original idea of N26. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the evolution of Papaya to what happened until today.
So I think for everybody in the audience, maybe not knowing kind of where N26 came from. So we like my co-founder Max and myself, we founded the company 5.5 years back on our living room couch. But when we started the company, it was actually about a completely different product. So we actually were working on a prepaid card for teenagers, which we called Papaya. And our idea was kind of a lot of kids, you know, use the App Store, and normally they borrow the cards of their parents, so it's like ending up as a mess. So they book a lot on their cards because it's not their own cards, and it's very hard for kids to get actually their own cards. And then we said, okay, let's build an app where the parents can see what the children spend, and a slick interface and easy access to cards for kids. Then we launched that. We worked on this 2013. We actually raised our seed round like 500,000 euros based on that idea. Then we launched a product after, I think, 9 months or 8 months into kind of a beta, and with the first 200 customers. And then we figured out that all these customers, not mainly the kids were using it, because we also had a couple of customers that were parents that said, okay, look at my banking experience, how bad it is, and how much better kind of the prepaid card for kids you're doing is. And then a lot of people around us, like our age, approached us and said, okay, my banking experience is really bad. Like, what do you do? Why do you do and narrow yourself to kind of kids, which is a much, I think, more difficult use case. At the same time, we actually learned that building a product that has all the bank account functionality is not as complex as we thought. Because starting a bank from scratch, I think, is really, really difficult in terms of your mind getting around the topic, which is really huge, a lot of regulation, a lot of topics you need to think about. And then I think we as a team learned that actually the prepaid card that we had, you could transfer money to, you could like go to the ATM, you saw the transaction you did with this. And then we actually bank account is even easier. You don't have two people that need to sign up, parents and children. And what we did then is we said, okay, let's upgrade the project and upgrade our company, not deliver something to an incumbent, to a bank, but go in direct competition. Because we saw there's the potential. A lot of people came to us and said, we want to have that product for grown-ups. And then I think the hardest decision of our company life maybe was really to say we worked 9 months very hard launching this MVP, bring it into beta phase, and then next step really was, you know, a week later after we launched the MVP, we said, okay, we stop it completely, we go back into development for another year, and really developed another year. And you need to fight different wars. You need to fight first as a founder. You think the first 3 months about, you know, maybe you should upgrade the product.
Let's talk about prioritization a little bit later on. But like, help me to understand, how would you make this decision? Would you rather go via your guts because you just feel like that something is going on here, or did you really track everything that was happening, even in the early days?
So I think as a founder, it's very difficult to distinguish between your gut feeling and kind of the feedback you get. And normally it's all coming together. So you have kind of gut feeling, then you get feedback of customers all the time, and then your feeling actually changes and you iterate on the idea. I think in the end, you need to base this on the feedback of customers if you have launched a product. I think the gut feeling, and I think we'll talk a little bit later about that as well, but I think the gut feeling is really in the beginning, when you have an idea, sometimes it's really hard to ask customers about it. So I think the first MVP that you create should be based very much on a problem that you identify, and then going to kind of an idea that you and the team has in terms of that's the first product. Because I think asking customers what's the product, I think is too easy and they normally don't know.
Okay, but still, like, how would you go about the technical part about it? So what is the tip that you can give to founders here? How would you measure the customer feedback that you've just described? Because if I think about like iterating really quickly on the product that you're trying to ship, what do you need to know about the user behavior and how do you measure it?
I think for an MVP, and I think for an MVP, you really need to define kind of what problem are you solving for kind of the customer you ship it to. And you need to define clear success criteria. Yeah, so I think for some products that is more complex. For us, I think if you launch a card product, maybe it's paying with the card. How often do they use the card? Are they recurring users? Are they actually signing up to the product? Yeah, so kind of a couple of success criteria you can look at. And then you can actually immediately after you launch it, you can see if what you forecasted is actually what you're getting back from the market. And if this is far off, I think you should think about maybe doing a different product or iterating. I think the iteration, depending obviously on how big your customer base is, if you're really small, if you're only launching an MVP, it's sometimes difficult to get quantitative data. But I think in our stage now, if we do new products and we have over 1 million customers now, that's all quantitative data. So we launch a product, and it's also a little bit of qualitative interviews that we do afterwards. But basically, you can say after the launch, people like it, people don't like it. And then it's more, you look at the quantitative data, and then based on the quantitative data, if you see some patterns, or if you see, I don't know, people drop out in that stage, or people don't use certain features, I think then you should go into qualitative interviews to find out where is really the problem. Is the problem because, I don't know, there's a bug in the MVP, or is the problem because the screen is bad designed, or communication's bad? So.
Okay, so one step back. How do you hire great product managers to make this happen? Like, we did a little survey a couple of months ago, and we asked what is the most difficult role to recruit. It was CTOs, but directly after that it was basically the chief product officer. So how would you go about hiring product people? Hiring
the right product managers is really, really, I think, difficult. Yeah, I think the market on product managers in Europe is really early stage. Yeah, I think, why is that? Because there are not many great digital products out there, I think. Yeah, so I think it comes down to just a very kind of a limited set of companies. And I think when I benchmark N26 to kind of other companies, I think we're pretty good in product management. And if you look at our team in product management, we have actually a lot of people. You can come from two areas. Either you come more from the technical side, so you need to get more maybe of the business side to understand kind of the business implications, or you come from more from the business side and you need to understand kind of more the product and technology side. So that's the two ways you can get into product management. I think we are most of the time growing the people within the team. They're starting maybe with less experience and then growing with the team.
How do you do the training? So what is it what you do with them if they join as juniors?
I think you train on the job. Yeah, I think it's basically you get the first project and get it up and running. Yeah, so and then I think what you need to do is you need to be obviously part of an organization. Now we have like a product management team with different levels. We've a kind of a career path where you also get exchange of more senior product managers. So normally we have kind of the squads that we're having where you then have different product managers in there, more senior, and then you maybe start as a more junior person in the team, and you already get coaching. You can talk to them and discuss problems, and then you need to grow with the tasks.
That's actually a nice transfer to that. So Reid Hoffman, the founder and CEO of LinkedIn, said that, and this was a famous quote, that you should feel ashamed for the first MVP, otherwise you've shipped too lately. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I think you can agree to this, but also you need to build this MLP, the minimum lovable product. Yeah, so I think if you only build a shitty product, then you will not be successful, I think. In some cases, if the use case is really, really big and there's a real big need, so people really take the hassle of a bad user experience, that's true. But if it comes to completely digital products, as our product is for most of the part, besides the cards, the usability and how you set up the usability is an important part of the MVP. How you structure the sign up to a product, how that is sold, how the wording is around that. So sometimes there is a difficulty on if you launch a product that's really shitty that you actually too early on say it's not successful. So you need to put some thought into the wording, some thought in the usability, and you should be still ashamed because you know where the big product is. But not sure if this is true for today's world as well. I mean, if you have been the first startup out there to connect people finding jobs, maybe then that's still true. But I think if there's competition on the market, maybe you need to wait a little.
But that's an interesting one. So how do you find the right balance between MLP and MVP? So is it a gut feeling or is it data?
It's a gut feel.
It's a gut feel. We talked about prioritization a little bit earlier when you said that there's so many different things going on. So naturally, if you think back in the early days of starting Papaya and moving towards N26, how do you achieve consensus on making one product version that everybody follows? So how can you create this consensus?
I think it's difficult. I think there is always a lot of opinions on products, but I think in the end you have to have maybe clear decisions on which direction you want to go. And you can also grow with this through the experience within the company. Yeah? Because I think in the end you don't want to have an emotional discussion about products. You need to have a discussion about certain KPIs you want to reach.
But if you involve your guts, like you will have an emotional discussion because that's an opinion.
That's true, but the emotional discussion is only maybe the last 10%. So I think like 90% of what you decide should actually be decided on the data you have, or research you have done before, problems you've identified. And then the gut feeling more comes in if it's, I like the button, I don't like the button. Then it's gut feeling. And then there's a judgment, and then maybe it's also, over time you experience that some people are really good in terms of judging what the customer actually in the end wants to see, and some other people have difficulty to do that, and more are better with like quantitative analysis. In the end, you still need to call it at one point. I think in the beginning, it's very much the founders who do it maybe. It's also the CPOs, it's also the POs. Yeah, so it's kind of on the different levels. People have to take these calls all the time. But in the end, I think product in general is not a democratic decision. In the end, it's then you get an average product.
Everybody has an opinion.
Yeah, I had a couple of I think we had a couple of iterations in the company as well, where a lot of people had an opinion, and then we had only a product that was average. And then you're not successful because you have to create the product that people love. And if you want to be a product for everyone, you're not going to be that product that people love. So you have to have a little bit of this, but this can come from a PO, that can come from a CPO, that can come from other people within the organization that kind of drive that process. And maybe I do it for a couple of projects, yeah. Other people do it for other projects, so I think there needs to be a balance. But it doesn't mean that not everybody can contribute to the product, yeah. But in the end,
like VCs, for example.
Yeah, I think VCs normally don't comment on our product, but at least ours don't. But sometimes they also have very good ideas because there's also the external perspective. I mean, you're not working every day in the same company, yeah. So that's maybe the value add that I maybe have because I'm not always in the product team every day. Also, VC has maybe to us on the advisory board if he has ideas from the outside. So I think I always value kind of the input that we get.
What should founders keep in mind when they want to build a company with a very strong user base or experimentation and the product in the focus? So what summing everything up that we have discussed throughout until now, what would you say are the top 3 things that people should do in order to build a product-driven organization?
You need to start with the product. So I think many people start too much with the business case, and you need to. Yeah, the business case is easy in the end. I mean, if you go in an industry that you're not completely create from new, why should we do less revenue than a traditional bank? There's no reason for that. Yeah, so we will do more because our customers like us more, we have a better brand. So in the end, you will get to kind of the minimum the same revenue a traditional bank does at one point, and maybe double because you do many more things. So if you need to obviously understand the underlying business model. But if this somehow works, yeah, and then I wouldn't spend too much time on how the business model works. I would spend really in the beginning, especially what made a difference for N26 is like the growth. We grew quickly to kind of a couple of 100,000 customers, and it's far bigger than any other fintech in Central Europe, I would say. And that's the difference. That's because our product is good. And now we can work on the business model. We can launch more products. You have to have the vision for the business model, but I think you need to focus really on the product and work with the customers, launch the product, and yourself, you need to spend a lot of time in the product. I think that's the key success factor. Your team, the product owners, they need to use the product. I also see the tendency sometimes with us where people only do the product, but actually no one never used it in the end, and then there are kind of things that don't work so much, so perfectly. And so I think it's really the usage of the product. You need to use it yourself. You need to talk to customers, and that's what makes it successful. And this focus on the product.
I think that's a good moment then to wrap it up. First of all, Valentin, thank you very much for coming here tonight and for joining us. I think that was a very insightful session. I just personally can say that it's been impressive what you've built over the last years. And so join again, be a guest next time as well during the 5th session. And again, big applause for Valentin. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And yeah, it was fun. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.